Dr. Reena here. I'm a dental specialist and founder of Ep3, located at 75 Harley Street. Welcome to my podcast, Life and Smile, where we talk about everything dental, lifestyle, business, and much more. Every episode, I'm joined in conversation with a specialist expert in their chosen field, who give us a behind-the-scenes glimpse into their daily regime, career turning points, and an insider look at what they can't live without. As a businesswoman myself, it's so inspiring to hear how people have built their careers and shattered those glass ceilings. So let's get the conversation going. One of the reasons I wanted to create the Life and Smile podcast was to be able to have exclusive and in-depth conversations that bring together lifestyle and business across often contrasting industries. But most importantly, this podcast was set up to celebrate people's success stories, the steps they took to get there, and how they make it work. In this episode, I really wanted to further explore the global business world itself and what it takes to succeed. Our guest today is certainly at the top of his game. In fact, it was so difficult to pin him down as he's so busy and in demand, but I'm so delighted he was able to join me here in person at our Harley Street studio. I wanted to introduce you to Alpesh Patel. In an industry where a certain degree of discretion is key, Alpesh is an entrepreneurial business leader with over 20 years of experience in managing professional services internationally. Whilst I've been building my own career and the Ep3 brand, I've always truly admired and been super inspired by how Alpesh has successfully driven his career. So Alpesh, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
In your career, you have covered everything from strategy development and execution through to attracting and recruiting high-profile talent to grow and establish market-leading companies. But rewinding back to where it all began, tell us, how did everything start?
I think it started actually with a life experience. I think for me, I lost my father at a very young age. And I was doing my MBA when I lost my father. And I saw, my family was very successful up until that point, but I saw that the reward of success, if you go too far, can actually take you to points where you don't actually reap the rewards of that.
Right.
And that led me to finish my MBA. And rather than going to my own business, it led me to go into the corporate world. And bizarrely, going into the corporate world was an excuse to say, I don't want to work too hard and I don't want to fall ill at a young age or get an illness that affects me. And that triggered me going into the corporate world. So I want a decent job. My family's well off. I kind of just want to work and earn a bit of money and pass time. But then I fell into the corporate world and I became the exact entrepreneur I always was, but within the boundaries and the infrastructure of the city. That's kind of where it all began. So the trigger was my father's illness. The driver was to do something different, but actually all it triggered me to do was get a bigger platform to do what I wanted to do.
Right.
Yeah.
So then you finished your degree, and tell us about your first role, and then how that developed to what was now a global kind of role.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first 5 years of my career were I hate the word, but I'm going to use the word interesting. I think I was pretty average academically, and I don't apologize for that. I was pretty average academically. So when I went into the corporate world, I joined a boutique because I basically wouldn't have got into the big firms. And that 5 years of working in a boutique taught me how to compete because we never had the edge. We never had the brand. We never had the balance sheet. We were just small.
Right.
But what we learned to do was to beat the big firms because we were different. We were edgy. I would always say that if I was pitching where a big competitor would pitch to a finance director for a corporate finance job, I would pitch to a chief executive because the finance director would never choose me because my firm wasn't big enough.
Right.
But the chief exec would always choose me because we were better. So we learned for 5 years how to beat the big firms. And it also taught you to do everything because in a small firm, you can't have someone for every piece of work. So that's kind of where it began.
Right.
I think that led to a platform where I was then headhunted to go into Ernst & Young, a global accounting firm. And I didn't want to go there, to be honest. I mean, it was dull. It was boring. It was an accounting firm. It was not where I wanted to be. But the amount of money they wanted to pay me to build a business for about a year to 2 years, and then I was going to be out, was why I went there.
Right.
But when I got there, I kind of got identified very early as someone who would never fit their mold. and who was never going to conform to their style and ways. And that was by the chairman of the firm, Nick Land, at the time, a long time ago. And Nick always said that, I can make accountants like, McVitie's can make biscuits, because I'm a factory for building accountants. But he always said, I can't make an entrepreneur.
Yes.
And he said, you're going to have a nightmare in this place because the rules, the parameters, the boundaries will limit you. But I need to find a way to avoid that and for you to break through that. And that was the start of my journey. And there was a good and bad in that journey, right? There was good and bad in that journey. But I was lucky, I guess. I had a good hand. I had amazing coaches, mentors, and sponsors through my career. Yeah.
And that kind of personality of kind of going, thinking out the box, not following, I'll say, the rules, but, taking a different route to other people. Have you always been like that? Or is it something that you learned from your first role? As you said, it was quite a unique opportunity. Is it something that you think is inbuilt? Do you think it's a good thing? Do you think it's a bad thing?
I think thinking differently is a great skill to have.
Yeah.
I think learning from a corporate finance boutique to compete in the big firms by changing the rules, by changing the competitive landscape, is what would have shaped some of that thinking. Some of it, I believe, comes from East African heritage of entrepreneurialism. So I think all of those factors drive that.
Yeah,
is where I start. Yeah.
Agreed. So you completed your BSc in Business Studies at Middlesex University. Then you had your Master of Business Administration at Aston before your global career when you started operating at board level. And in your career, you've seen delivering expansions on an international basis, as we said. So places like Germany, India, Middle East. I mean, wow, what a career globally. What would you say from all of that have been your biggest milestones along the way?
I think the first was probably making partner. I think I was the youngest equity partner at Ernst & Young, the first coloured partner in the UK. And those were my goals. I wanted to be a full equity partner. I wanted to be the youngest partner. I wanted to be the first Asian partner. And that was important to me. And that milestone was an important milestone for me. It was a breakthrough milestone where I didn't want to do it in 5 or 10 or 12 years. I wanted to do it in 2 years.
Wow.
And I wanted to do it differently. I wanted to do it not as someone who delivers good client service, but as someone who builds great businesses and nurtures and builds amazing talent. So I think that would be my first milestone. I think probably my second milestone was the transition of moving from an individual that knew how to make a lot of money and got rewarded for making a lot of money for myself and for my firm, to being an individual that learned how to lead and manage people. And that for me was a big milestone in my career because maybe I was all about myself,
Right.
And that's what drove my success professionally. And learning to succeed through others and with others and learning to see others be successful. It's a different type of success. It's not as tangible, but it's more self-fulfilling, I think. And that was an interesting milestone in my journey because it hurt me. It was very hard for me to do. There were very sharp moments in my career where I had to turn on a sixpence to kind of really make that mental change to make it about others and not me. I guess if I was to pick a third one, it was probably working in India, I'm a Brit, I'm an English guy. I'm born and bred here. But I think going and working in the emerging markets with 15,000 people working for you, all of whom are random, unstructured, creative, but, completely impossible to handle because there's just no structure whatsoever. Learning to respect them and work with them, not apply your own processes to how they work because they are different. And seeing them succeed was fascinating and hard work, but fascinating.
How long were you there for in India?
I was in India for 3 years.
3 years, wow.
Yeah, I was in India for 3 years.
I guess that, it's a completely different ballgame, generally internationally. But yes, I agree. As a British Indian myself, understanding their worldview and how they work and what's success for them is quite different to perhaps how we might work here. So that must have been super challenging. Is there anything you would have done differently along the way?
I always made my brand in driving change, and I always made my brand in not worrying too much about the consequences of that change.
Yeah.
And if I look back now, I caused quite a lot of collateral damage in my path to the businesses I built because I didn't and wouldn't tolerate poor performance. There was a point in my career where I wouldn't even tolerate average. There was this 360 feedback period in my professional career where I got his year's feedback, and he said, Alpesh, your businesses are outperforming, your financials are outperforming, your team are outperforming, but everyone in your team is a high performer who's top 10% of this firm. 90% of this firm is not high performance. It's really, really good, but it's not high performance. And I guess I kind of rejected that for too long. The engine room of the businesses I ran were really good, but I often realized, I didn't even realize, I just had this natural ability to find special talent. And I had an ability to find special talent and work with special talent, but also to manage special talent, because I believe that highly, highly driven, motivated, successful people who are close to genius in their careers are dysfunctional. Steve Jobs was dysfunctional. Elon Musk is dysfunctional. And they are not balanced people. They skew on a criteria, or they skew on an axis, whatever that be. And I think most of the people who worked for me or managed by me, were driven by me, or built businesses by me, were not balanced because they were amazing at what they did.
Right.
And I've said it before. It's like running, a $100 million racehorse. You don't just saddle it and ride it. It's going to be frisky. It's going to be dangerous. It's going to want to run in a different direction. So a lot of it was about that, and I enjoyed that. But I kind of regret, could I have done things a little bit slower and not always thrown everything up in the air as quickly as I did? But that was kind of me. It was kind of me.
Yeah. You mentioned about everything has to be outstanding. Averages is not acceptable.
Yeah.
How do you, when you're working with people, how do you manage that? Do you just say to someone, you're too average, you need to perform better? It probably takes a lot of, do you think, is your approach to be blunt and just say it how it is? Or how do you nurture that person to become better without demotivating them?
No, it was never like that. No, I just naturally built teams of high performing people. So I had a natural ability. I don't think it was correct actually, but a natural ability to select people who are high performers. I just naturally would walk around the office, and even if you were young and new to the business, I kind of know you had potential.
Right.
And if you had my cover, I'd get you to partner, or I'd get you to director. But what I learned was that when I went through the stage of leading and managing teams, and when I worked with, some really quite special coaches and mentors, what I learned was the power of a team is not just the individual who scores the goal, or the individual that makes the strike, or the individual that fires the gun, right? There's a lot of people behind them that do that. And learning to work with them and learning to build them, either directly or through team members who would help them do that, is what I had to do.
And obviously you mentioned you identify these high performers, and I guess you can just feel it and you can see it.
Yeah.
Was it more than just that academic performance and the numbers? Was it something more to do with their attitude, their personality? How did you identify them?
Because I didn't come from an academic high performance background, I believe that the edge that was naturally in myself came from a restlessness for wanting to do things that were not naturally in my right to do. It wasn't natural to be a partner in an equity firm at 28. It wasn't natural to be a senior partner at 32, right? It wasn't natural to do acquisitions the way I did them. So for me, I always believed that, well, I don't have a right to do this, so I'm going to do this. And I think that that's about heritage and background and pain, the stuff you've been through in your life. And I think that's what really kind of drove that thinking. That's really what it's that edginess. So going to your question about selecting people, I've built businesses with the first 5 recruits being from single parent families, the north of England, and high sporting professionals from Loughborough University. Yeah. Every single one of them was not about academic excellence. Right. It was about unearthing a restlessness or a competitive gene in them that would drive them to perform at any cost, or proving a point. And I'm not saying anything about the north of England. I'm just saying I've built businesses like that, where I haven't looked at academia solely. I have in some cases, I have employed some amazing people academically, but it's often that drive I look for.
So interesting. And I guess within those teams, you have obviously high performers, but also multiple personalities and sometimes very, very different people. And I guess getting them all to work together to get that performance is crucial. Have you got any advice on, if you have a team where everyone is excellent, everyone is very competitive, but then working together, how do you navigate that? How do you get the team to run together?
By measuring performance through both financial but also through behaviors. So I had a famous point where I'll give you an example. I paid a guy to come and join my business an immense amount of money. He's joining, I paid him £1 million bonus. I paid him £1.5 million annual comp plus £1 million bonus if he delivered my numbers. So it was a massive fee. And this guy was a completely difficult character, but he could do anything. He was just unbelievable. Anyway, I gave him this bonus scheme. I gave him this fee structure. I gave him his sign-on, and I put a clause in his contract, which was your final KPI to get your bonus is don't be a fool. And he said to me, well, Alpesh, every year, my £1 million bonus is going to be on the fact that you decide don't be a fool. He said, what does that mean? I said, well, I don't know what it means, but what it means, let me give you an example of what it means. It means if you don't behave correctly, if you don't treat women fairly, if you don't have diversity in your team the way it needs to be, if you don't treat juniors with respect, if you make people work Saturdays and Sundays at midnight and it doesn't work for the behaviors I want to manifest in the business, I won't give you a bonus. And that was quite an interesting way of saying to people, you can perform well, but actually I'm going to decide what behavior is right or wrong. And some of that comes from the fact that my behaviors weren't right when I was younger, and I could see a lot of my fault lines in them. So a lot of it would be around softer measures.
Yeah.
A lot of it would be like clarity of focus. I mean, in India, I had a lot of people who I'd say, well, I want you to play in defense and I want you to make sure this doesn't happen. And they'd go running and play in the front and score a goal, and they go, oh, look, I did this. And I said, well, hold on, I wanted you to manage the risk of my business. Why have you gone? Oh, but we did it. We did it. Well, no, that's not what I want, because in a team, I need a balanced team, and I need that team to play to position.
Yeah.
So it was a lot about behavior and softer measures.
Yeah. I completely agree. And when we've, obviously I'm more junior in my career so far, but we've been really hot on developing a really key culture in our business, and we have values. So we have 3 values, which are all behavioral. So reliable, enthusiastic, like if you're going to be here, you want to be here, and excellent. So everything you do has to be to the highest standards. And we use that literally for everything from recruitment to appraisals, to anything else. Like, are you following those values? And I mean, did you have that when you built, do you set values, or is it just more inherent culture that you imbibe across the business? Do you think it's worthwhile identifying those behaviors from the beginning so the team are aware of it?
I think that if people don't aspire and work to a set of values, you can't create an integral culture, right? But also, when you work with extremely high performing people, you have to set them their boundaries of what they can and can't do, because they won't always meet all of those values. Now, you can't compromise a value.
Yes.
But you can define a minimum, quid pro quo of where someone can go to. So I do believe that to create an integrated business and a high performing business, you should create a culture. But I've also built a business. I mean, the last business I built was around, everything was about the individual. The individual came with their own culture and their own skills. And I said, my culture in that business, I said, we are a set of beehives, and every beehive has a queen bee, but every beehive has its own culture. And the reason for that was it was such a diverse business with such diverse and IQ DNA in it. And the age profile was at a point where I couldn't change them. I had to build a culture of behavior at the boundary of the beehive, but actually your identity is the identity I acquired you with, and I don't want to change that because I can't.
Right.
So at Ernst & Young, we built an integral culture. We built an integral set of values. We built an integral system, and we measured and rewarded on those values. And we managed people that would come outside those values in a particular way because they skewed, but we didn't let them breach those values. At FTI, when we did the analysis of the culture I inherited when we became a EMEA leader, I knew it could never create an integral culture. So we had to manage it through behaviors and actually say, your value is that you are a different set of cultures, but you come under one brand.
Yes, makes total sense. So you need something. I think
you need the right thing for the solution.
Exactly.
For the business,
Exactly. I once read a quote that if you compromise your values and your culture, you have none. So, and it's quite disrespectful to the rest of the team if you're not following those. They're working really hard. You've mentioned in your career, you've had lots of mentors, coaches. Tell me a bit more about that, because I guess is that where you've got your inspiration from? What have you used as a guide along the way to be able to achieve so much so quickly?
No, I think there's two things there. I think the first thing is identifying people I aspire to, or I aspire have skills or capabilities or personalities traits that I would like to have myself. So that's people I want to learn from. They're not necessarily mentors. They're what I call beacons of excellence. So, there was a guy called Stephen Barrett. He was a senior partner at Ernst & Young when I was very young. He was a top 10 partner. He was highly influential in the firm. He was great with people, and he learned to nurture young talent. Those are all the skills I wanted. I wanted to be like Stephen. That was an example. I think then comes the fact that, I want to be like Stephen. I want to learn how to nurture young talent, and therefore I want to learn how to build great teams. But my feedback would say, but you don't know how to build great teams because you build a team about yourself. In my early career.
Right.
Hold on. There's a break in this, right? Because I want to be like Stephen, but I don't know how to build great teams because actually I know how to make money for myself. So that then leads to, so that's really hard feedback, and I don't have that skill. Do I want to learn that skill, and do I have the capability of learning that skill? Yes, I want to learn that skill. I believe I have the capability of learning that skill. How do I learn that skill? Right. And that's when your coaches and your mentors come in. And I've had a number of coaches and mentors. I had an occupational psychologist called John Nicholson, I think his name was. And John was brought in for 3 years to work with me. And the reason he was a psychologist was because sometimes, I'm not saying I was a high performer. I was told I was a high performer. People who operate at my level don't listen to change. And John, they often said when they paid John that he's going to rewire you, because it's the only way to change you, because you don't know, right? You only know what you know, and you're opinionated. Yeah. So John spent 2 years actually breaking me down in a nice possible way to understand that my success was also my limit unless I changed it. I then worked with, a number of sports personalities, including Will Carling, who led the England rugby team to the win. And, Will was brought in very specifically for a year to take me through how to build a winning team and how to absorb the success of a winning team when you're at the front of it. I worked with General Colleen Powell, who led the Iraq US forces into Iraq, and that was quite harsh because that was about really him spending time with me to get me to understand that when a team is in difficulty because of an individual, don't break the link, don't break the individual, because in war, if you break the front line's gone, and then everything's gone. So a lot of different coaches for a lot of different reasons. I had Sir Gary Kirsten who worked with me, and he led the Indian cricket team to the World Cup win. And, Gary taught me how to lead great people who are more powerful and influential with you, and with one emotion can change everything. So a lot of different people teaching me a lot of different things. And the issue was not what they taught me. The issue, I believe there's a difference between wanting to learn and being able to learn. Right. And a lot of people aren't able to learn. And you have to open yourself to exposure, right? Yeah. If you want to learn, you have to open yourself to that.
Yeah, it makes complete sense.
Yeah.
And I guess as part of that, and I guess like how we met at Gita's party, which, and it's such a small world anyway, but I find that network of people as well that you build over time. And it doesn't have to be like a huge network, but I find like successful people that align, even though they're contrasting industries, they align with you in some way. Do you feel like for you, obviously you're connected with the coaches and mentors, beacons of excellence, your teams, but did you find for your success and all the success of the businesses that you've ran, is a network, do you think that's an important thing?
I think that was probably, it's a great question because it's probably something we've missed. I mean, it's probably one of the most powerful aspects of my career. So if you take my professional career as a market guy building businesses, I had very, very strong market networks. And those networks were built on, it's the old cliche, but it's absolutely true, on trusted relationships. And my clients would trust me at a personal level. And that trust at a personal level led to business.
Right.
And my ability, people would often say that, well, you would go and talk to someone, they'd have half an hour chat with you. They think you've talked to them about their holiday, their passions, their beliefs, what they did last night. And actually they've just told you everything and anything about themselves personally and professionally. So that ability to network is important. I think the other thing that's really important is that, this is a bit crude, but I guess in my early days, I always looked at networks as assets and liabilities.
Okay.
And, you could meet someone and you'd say, actually, you know what? I don't know what I'll get out of you, and I may get nothing out of you, but I might get something out of you. Therefore, this is quite an important relationship. The reward may or may not come. And you may see people say, actually, you won't say it like this, but actually, this actually doesn't really help me, right?
Yeah.
I think the second bit about networks is your closer network. And I always worked on the principle of what I called UK PLC. Okay. So Alpesh Patel is the chief executive of a company. It's a concept of UK PLC. So my concept, it was a hypothesis in my mind that I run a company and I'm a listed company and I'm going to build my board. Now, who do I want around my board? Who are my executive directors and my non-executive directors? So who do I need to run my finance function? Because maybe I'm not that good at counting.
Right.
Who do I need to run my people function? Because I'm good at people, but I haven't got time to give to people. Right. So that would be my executive board. So that's people, not who work for me, who are going to be in my network to guide me through that process, but I'm going to call on them to help me.
Right.
And then there was my non-executives, who were people who were there in my board, in my quasi-board. It's not a real board.
Yeah.
It's in my mind.
Yeah.
Who could support me in following areas because they've got experience in X or Y. So my in and that network would change. It would change every year based on my feedback, my 360s, what my goals were, where I was going. So I would see networks in those two. Close developmental network, executive, non-executive, and then a broader network.
So we were talking obviously about, so we met at a party. And obviously, kids party, but it made me realize actually people around you, it's a small world, but people around you are really important. And networking as such is, I find, super important for the development of your career and success. And although people can be from contrasting industries, if they align with you in some way, it really helps. So have you found that networking in your career has led to success? And how do you currently kind of compartmentalize everything?
Yeah, look, I think networking is important. I've networked my whole career, and I think in my early years, I built my business based on very, very strong networks. I think those networks, a lot of them were market-related networks. I worked with clients who I was very close to, and I built strong personal and trusted relationships with. And those clients would talk to me from anything about their family, their kids, their lifestyle, their holidays, and their personal strengths. I mean, I have someone today, a very successful lady called Hannah Farah, who was working in government, and I had coached and mentored her, and she was part of my network. And she would say, even if she has dinner with me today, that Alpesh, you gave me the courage to move on and build a business. So my networks were very strong and they were powerful, but I was often asked to be I was often a natural networker. I could see the modes of what was happening. And as I said earlier, I see networks as assets and liabilities. You may have value to add. It may be in challenging my thinking. It may be in how you dress, and I want to be like that. It might be personality. It doesn't. I don't know, but I think like that. And then my closer network is around this concept as a what I call UK PLC. It's a hypothesis that if I run a company and I have a board, who do I want around that board? And that board would be a group of people who are in an executive role and a non-executive role. The executive people support me in my career. They're not employed, but they are people who bring skills to me and round me out as an individual, whether it be finance, people, whatever it may be. And the non-execs are people who give me guidance at a more strategic level. And I often built that board around me and hypothesized as to who would be in that board, and would have people leave in my mind and join that board, because it was my inner network which drove my growth.
I love that. I literally love that. I think it's, and they always say you're the average of the 5 people you spend most time with. And yes. I personally find who you surround yourself with, what their nature is like, what their goals, how driven they are, it does have an influence on you as well, for sure. Yeah. So having that idea of having a board with limited seats on there, and picking who and
who
changing
you want,
that.
and just thinking about it all the time. But you raise a really interesting point. I mean, I have a big issue with, in a high-performing team, the function of that high-performing team is an outcome of the lowest common denominator in that team.
Yes.
And that's why, I find it very difficult to pick average, because if my team has average in it, then I'm a function of the lowest common denominator. My team's not high-performing. And that's why the dilemma is quite an interesting one. And then also with now diversity and inclusion being such a big topic, how do you cater for that and high performance? And that's something I struggle very, very deeply to cope with, because I don't believe in anything other than high performance, and I'm not prepared to compromise the other aspects of what society expects and demands today for outcomes, which is probably why I'm not in the city anymore. I don't want to be.
So it all makes complete sense. When you're working with, so it's a new company, we talked about teams, we talked about networks, values, etc. But you have a new company who started to work with you. What would be, because there's so much to sort out, I'm sure. And you're just saying today you're going to your next meeting where you're literally revamping the whole team. But if there were like 3 steps that a new business or company should focus on, what would you normally tell them? You're starting off with a new business. What are those kind of first few things that need to get sorted? What's on the top of the list in terms of priorities for them to be able to perform at a high level?
I mean, that's a really difficult question, because, the cliche answer would be, here are the 3 things. The reality is that's an impossible question to answer, because what you're going to advise that company is a function of that company as individuals. So, for example, I worked for Reliance Industries, Mukesh Ambani, 3rd richest man in the world, owns India, is the person who, Barack Obama, Bill Gates, Elon Musk meet before they meet the Prime Minister of India, right? The most powerful man in India, full stop, right? Now, going in to see Mukesh Ambani and saying to him, here are the 3 steps you're going to focus on, he'll kick you out his office in about 20 seconds. But being a senior advisor and saying to him, I'm not sure you've got the generational expertise in your children to run this business. What are we going to do about it? That's a pretty contentious point, but delivered in that way and that point, he's going to listen. Yes. Right? Saying to him that you are this business, and without you, there is no infrastructure in this business, because there is no empowerment, delegation, confidence, and belief in your management team, is what you see. So my approach to it has never been a methodology. It has always been, this is what we need to do. And now, how are we going to get there? Right. Okay. So once you've identified the issue, the end point, and you've acknowledged it, you then define your route map to get there.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
So it's outcome.
You can't really have
outcome.
It's outcome. Yeah, you can't have a set of steps that you just do for every blanket approach.
I mean, what's a consultant? If I was a management consultant and really wanted to do what most normal people do, I'd say, well, here are 3 steps. You do a diagnostic, you do a strength weakness analysis, you do an opportunity analysis, you define your route. There's a load of bollocks. You do all that, but you do that once you've defined the outcome. Yeah. I mean, I would often say, I want to do voice of the customer. I would often say, okay, all of you can say whatever you want, what a customer's saying, right? So let me do a voice of the customer, because that's going to define everything, irrespective of what your beliefs are, your perceptions are, what you think you are. Don't bloody matter.
Yeah.
Let's go and talk. Let me talk to 20 customers, right? And let me see what they're really going to say. And then let's figure out what we're going to do.
Yeah, love it. So things have changed for you now. So in terms of your kind of day-to-day life now, and I know when we spoke last time, it's just so interesting how you've done all the business side of things, and now you're in your kind of next chapter of your life. So what's your kind of typical day in the life now?
So I've changed my life completely, right? I retired at 45. I lived a life where I had, 300-400 emails in my inbox every day, probably 2 out of 4 holidays a year. I would have a plane sent to me to fly back to somewhere in the world because there was a problem with my global companies. And I would probably never be present because I loved what I did. And yeah, I was managing people who were always demanding my time day and night. And I never had any issues with that. I think retiring for me was quite scary because one, I was locked out for 2 years, paid in the garden, and I wasn't allowed to work. But secondly, I was pretty important in my career, and when the day I retired, I was not important, and that's quite difficult. Whatever you say, that's quite difficult. When you can walk into 10 Downing Street and help the government build their response to the flu pandemic, or you advise Rishi Sunak on his strategy for election, with sort of things my teams do now, to retiring and sort of just being nobody, is quite difficult. So I think that was a big transition for me. I don't think I found it difficult, which surprises me. I'm going to answer your questions now. Now for me is very simple. I've turned my life the other way around. So I define everyone's life has productive time and unproductive time.
Okay.
I think most people in productive time work, and in unproductive time sort of have their holidays and relax.
Yeah.
I've decided to do exactly the opposite. So I define productive time as time where I do the things I want to do for me and my family. So productive time for me is going to Thailand next week.
Yeah.
Productive time for me is playing golf tomorrow morning. Productive time for me is going for a golf lesson today. So everything I want to do in the hours that are most productive are productive time. I define unproductive time from the day I retired as working. So I'm 52. My kids have gone to university. I worry about how I pass time as I get older. I don't want to work, but I want to make money. And I want to stay intellectually engaged at the times I want to be intellectually engaged and not at other times. So I went and bought a business which would allow me, my strategy of buying that business was to run that business on autopilot. My strategy of buying that business was to run that business off my iPhone. I wanted to build assets. I wanted to only work 1 day a week between 10 and 4. I wanted to leave legacy for my children. I wanted to build an annuity where I make money without working. And fundamentally, I only wanted to run the business when I'm in my unproductive time. And so for now, what I do is I do have this business. It's absolutely a hobby. It's of no interest to me other than passing time, although it does make a lot of money. But I think the interesting thing for me is I only run that business when I'm in the car going to the airport, when I'm going to the golf range, or when I'm going to all my phone calls happen in time when I can't do anything else. And I'm not prepared to work at times when I can do stuff for myself. And I think that's just such an amazing challenge.
That's
right?
incredible. Yeah.
I want to use all the time I can't do anything with to do the stuff I have to do. And all the time that's my time is my time to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I'm loving it.
Yeah.
It's not easy, but I'm absolutely loving it. And that goes back to having a great team. It goes back to I have a team. I have a manager in one of my businesses. She's 22, and I've always, because I was so young and so supported by people, I believe nurturing and building young talent and giving them, pushing them through boundaries when even they don't think they can, reaps reward as long as you give them the safety net to fall and catch them if they don't. And this young person, she got an outstanding from Ofsted, an Ofsted mock inspection yesterday. She's 22. I made her manager a year ago. She's the nicest person in the world. She's never going to jump up and say she wants more. And she's just delivered me an outstanding. And she kind of can't believe she did it. But we knew she's going to do it, and we know she can do more. And so for me, that's the reward now. It's seeing young talent who, by the way, are not paid the sort of money we all get paid. These are people in early education who are, look after, and it's just great to see their reward. So that's what I enjoy now.
So you've got nurseries as
I run a small business, fundamentally I spend a lot of my time doing things that are difficult to me. So it's a great example. So an example of this is, if you take my career, I kind of could do anything I really wanted to do, right? But everything was about driving and controlling and delivering what I wanted to do. It might sound really strange, but I play a lot of golf and I love golf. But the reason I love golf is not because everyone else loves golf. I love golf because technically learning to play golf properly is absolutely crippling, because to change any form of muscle memory takes years to do. So I'm technically coached at a level which is killing me, because it's absolutely opposite to my career. Because in a sport like golf, the more you control the club, the more it's not going to go anywhere. If you swing in to out, the ball goes out to in. So everything is opposite to my career. It's teaching me to let go, deliver a better outcome, when professionally I had to control to get a better outcome. So I spend a lot of my time doing things that are really, I do yoga, but I don't just do yoga. The professional who teaches me yoga is at a level that is insane. He the technical level at which he wants to take me. And by the way, I'm not even close to getting to the top of that. I'm probably a 5 out of 10 at the moment. But the technical aspects of what he's teaching me are stretching me. Not just in terms of physically, but in terms of mentally. So it's learning things that I find are genuinely challenging to my personality. Stopping and learning to breathe and meditate. I don't even know what that bloody means. I was like, why the hell would I do that?
Learn to breathe,
He said to me, well, why don't you meditate for 5 minutes? And he goes, but I don't know, why would I meditate? Because every time I meditate, I get happy thoughts about my golf swing or my next Alpesh. That's not what I'm teaching you to do. So it's learning new things, but things that are important to us.
Yeah. I love the way you've that mindset shift of productive and unproductive now in this second phase of your career and life. Also, those things that you mentioned just about meditation, even the golf, for someone at my stage, more the start of their career, do you think doing things like that, obviously it's very high pace, we're constantly, and I find if you're working high performing individual, you don't get time for things like yoga. You think you don't have time for things like golf. Do you think now, looking back, would you say to your younger self, actually, yes, be a high performer, but also spend time doing those little things? Do you think that would have helped you even more in terms of performance? I
think some of the most creative things I learned to do or did happened when I wasn't in the office. So if I was sitting in Bali on a beach for a week and I had the freedom to think and operate without the constraints of the pressures of my business around me, some of my best thinking was done in those environments. So I think my answer to that is, I think it's really important. I think actually you get better outcomes professionally if you do that. I think also that anybody who says they can't make time for themselves, well, you've got to look into why you can't make time for yourselves. Yes, you may be young. Yes, you may be at the start of a new business, but are you good at building teams? Are you good at empowering? Are you good at delegation? If you are a perfectionist, which I guess you probably are given your profession, nobody around you is going to be 100% you. But 95% is good enough. Yeah. And in the eye of the customer is 95%. 95% is 100%. So are you going to spend 3 extra days getting that individuals from 95% to 100% because you want that individual to be like you, when actually there's no dilution in quality, service or perception when you let them operate at 5%. And often it's that getting from 95% to 100% that takes Pareto, 80% of your time.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. So it is a lot about thinking like that.
Right.
Thinking differently like that. But I think the mindset of how do I break the connection between what I do and the hours I work and how I deliver my outcomes is it's an interesting challenge, isn't it? It's a fascinating challenge, I find.
Yeah. Completely agree. And then we always ask our guests, so if there are 3 items that, and now you're with your day-to-day life, that you couldn't kind of live without, or an app or something you couldn't function daily about, whether that can be an activity like yoga, but on a daily basis, what would they be?
Yeah, I mean, I thought about that question and then I avoided it. So I'm only going to give you one answer.
Okay,
my answer to that question is data. I think
data. Okay, nice. Yeah.
I have data. I have sensors on my golf clubs which monitor every strike I hit. So I know my data. I know my deviations. I know when I'm coming out. My health apps tell me all my data on my health. So I think, you talk about data-driven world and you talk about what data gives you. For me, I'm very reliant on a lot of data, but I don't think that's new, right? If you take my 360 feedback, that was data. Most people didn't know how to assimilate their 360 feedback and what to do with that data. Yeah. So for me, that's probably the main thing that drives me today. Is using data, whether it's personally or professionally or in a new business to do that. Yeah.
So having the data, understanding it, and then actually doing something about it. And data's all around us, I guess.
Today, data's everything, isn't it? It's about filtering the data and knowing what to do with it and not getting stuck in the data, but actually picking up the big messages from it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I could go on and on and on, like at the party, and I couldn't stop talking to you. So I know you have a super productive day ahead. You have lots of activities. So listen, thank you so much for your time. I'm sure all the listeners will find this super inspirational. So many nuggets of wisdom there that we can take away and get going with. But just to finish, what does the rest of the year hold for you? What have you got? Lots of good holidays planned? What's your rest of 2022?
Yeah, and this year's about a lot of travel, which we always do anyway. It's about getting these businesses to the next level. I've sort of gone a little bit faster than I wanted to, just because I couldn't stop myself. So it's just getting them back on a track of not needing me at all. And then it's about spending time with the family, really. I'm at a point, I'm not at the point where you are in your life. And I fear, I've been offered a number of opportunities to go back to the city, and I'm not going to do it because it will take me straight back to the world I chose consciously to live. I think a lot of people don't know when to give up.
Yes.
I think a lot of people don't. We would often say in my professional career, we're going to take him out in a coffin at 65 because he doesn't know anything different. And we also found many people professionally, the minute we asked them to retire, they would fall ill because their immune systems couldn't handle the coming off a cliff.
Yeah.
So for me, all of those things, my personal experience, my father, watching people, has led me to a massive shift, which has worked really well. And even though the opportunities could be massive to do it again, I just don't see why we do it. So
I think completely. And even the podcast we set up, the whole ethos for our business, it's a lifestyle approach. You shouldn't feel like you're working 24 hours a day. It's that lifestyle. And actually Geeta, this party we met, I particularly find her inspiring because she's really got that balance. She works, to a really nice balance. She spends time with her family. She goes on great holidays. And I think getting that formula right for someone at my stage from now, perhaps as well, trying to think about all those things is because, as you said right at the beginning, looking after your health is the main thing. And if you don't look after yourself, you can't do anything else anyway. So I could go on, as I said, but thank you so much. I'm sure we'll have you back again soon. Thanks, Alpesh.
Thank you.